All right, welcome everybody to a demonstration of CAD Standards Manager. My name is Matt Sparks. I'm a professional engineer here in California. You'll notice that on the hopefully you can see my screen. You can get a hold of me by email is probably the best, and we have a couple of websites. I just wanted to show you that CAD Standards Manager website. We do have some resources that show the documentation on how to use both pieces of software. We call it the admin and the user. You can download this at your leisure, and this is also an interface that if you do purchase the software, where you come and log in and download the stuff. So we do have that capability. Okay. What I'd like to start with is since we're talking about the AutoCAD side as well as the administration side, we have two pieces of software. One the user uses, and one the administrator can add and edit content. So we do store our standards in a database. Okay. We can either use SQL Server or an SDF file. This SDF file is what they call a compact edition, so it's just one file that they're using. Kind of reminds you maybe of if you guys used to use Access, it's just a single file. That's, let's say 90% of our clients are using the SDF file and reading that versus having to purchase and administer SQL Server. But there are some larger companies that use the SQL Server, which can be useful. But the topics today, of course, are going to be how to deal with the database and set up a little bit. Why is that important? Which can you do? I do want to make note here that you can have the database be compatible with multiple versions of AutoCAD simultaneously. Meaning if you have some of your users using 2019, and then you have other users 2022, for example, that the database will be compatible with all of them simultaneously. The only problem that you might have is when you're inserting symbols and details, etc. Those symbols and details can have a version of AutoCAD. So if you're using, like, say, 2016 and it doesn't have the 2018 drawing file format, you're going to have problems inserting files. But other than that, so anything 2018 or higher, which is typically nowadays, everything's compatible. We're then going to talk about the user features, what the user would see, and then, of course, how to deal with the administration side. So for CAD managers, being able to edit the content and have everybody simultaneously see it can be a big advantage and speed increase. Because what we normally see is that there are companies that have CAD standards. It's hard to adhere to them because it's usually in a binder. Sometimes the templates need to be updated or what have you. So what's nice about this, since it's in a database, the minute that the CAD administrator or CAD manager would edit that database, everybody just sees it and uses it. So you don't have to update technology or edit the folders or the binders or print something else out. It's just ready to use. And we found that that's a lot more successful in trying to get people to use it. If it's going to be easy, then evidently we're going to be starting using it. Okay. So secondarily, the database setup, like I was saying before, you have two choices. The SQL Server, you have to have that. You have to be connected to your network and have access to the database at any time. So working offsite can be difficult. But the SDF file, no additional software is needed. It's a portable file that gets copied to each client. So if you take a laptop, for example, and you're in the office and you launch the software, it'll download the latest version to the local machine. And you can take that laptop anywhere you like and still have access to your database. And just to be sure, it's a one-way track, right? Because on the client computer, they can't edit the actual data, of course. They're just using it. So it's only a one-way track. Okay. All right, so kind of basically what it looks like in AutoCAD. Right. I guess I don't really need that screen anymore. I just have a basic drawing, and you'll see that our interface is based off of ribbons, and it's a Standards Manager ribbon here. So everything is inside of AutoCAD as far as how to connect to the database, how to create layers, all that stuff. But the user sees is going to be based on this. There has been some serious improvements made in the last couple of versions. So 2021 and above have what you're going to be seeing now. If you have 2020 and lower, you're going to see a little bit older format, but most people have 2021 and above, not everybody. So that's something to consider. So what you're seeing here is the brand new stuff, of course. You're allowed to have multiple databases, meaning that you can have an internal one and an external one, depending, or a client-based one based on what project you're working on. Sometimes you're working for other companies that have their own standard, so you can make their own stuff. Okay, and that's a simple process here as you connect to a different database. We're going to get to some of this as we go. So By default, there's a database that we're going to be using. It's called NCS, National CAD Standards. We have a database ready to go for anybody who's willing to become a member of NCS. We have an agreement with them where if you become a member, at last check, it was like $400 to become a member of NCS. We can give you the database so that you can start with their entire layer scheme and blocks, etc., and then you can modify as you see fit. So that is an option. Of course, we also offer the opportunity to make data or make content from your stuff. So it's not like we'll be going into that a little bit here. Okay, so back to my slide for just a second. Okay. So first of all, we're going to be kind of going through the layers, how to deal with layers, why is it useful to have layers inside of a database, why is that beneficial. But this will be the interface, and we'll show you what the load layer sets, prefixes and suffixes, and reset layer properties. And we'll explain kind of what this means as we go. But layers obviously being a big part of AutoCAD, of course. Okay. All right, so first of all, you'll see that there's a layers panel here. There's a palette, there's an ID, etc. So all these palettes that we have, I should make note here, when you create these palettes, these are all very similar to like tool palettes and layered palettes, things like that come with AutoCAD. You have the opportunity to dock or allow docking. So these are modeless is what they call. So you can still be in this while you're still working. So it's not locked down. So you can have this open at all times if you wish. Okay, so if you're dealing with layers. So you'll see here, this is linked to an NCS database currently. And it's based off of what we call disciplines and groups. So based on the discipline that you are, and then either a group or component, etc. So the way that the layers are made up, I'm just going to go to civil for now. And there's a component database here. And so a layer is made up of up to these 5 categories. And these are the status, major, minor, etc. are right off of NCS. So if you're looking for a particular one, as you click on these layers, you'll see that these things will open up based on what's available in the database. So this is one method of actually creating layers. So if I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for, I can go to each one of these and figure out what I want, add it to the list. It goes in the database. There's the layer. You'll see there's a null category for these. That's why you only see 3. This color, line type, etc. It's all coming from the database. So the user doesn't need to know how to make that. They just need to go find the layer that they want. Okay. So that's component. That's not as usual because it's a little harder to find, but groups, again, these groups can be customized inside of the program, which we'll get to. So if, like, for example, I'm looking for something to deal with, I don't know, some buildings, you'll see some of the buildings like, hey, I want those layers, let's go and grab those. And of course I can make which one's current. You'll see here there's a plot style. So this is this database will allow for CTB versus STB plotting. If you're familiar with that, you can kind of see what the tables bring in. Okay, so again, all this stuff is coming from a database. Create an update. You see as these layers get created, when I hit that, this disappeared because I don't need to create the same layers again. But you can see all those layers that got created were there. So there's all my building ones. That was the one that I had set current before I left. And so you can see that. All right. So it's very easy to grab layers and find them and go ahead and load them in. I'll show you one other one that I see a lot of people using. So if you're not very familiar with the database, you can always just search, like, hey, I'm looking for some layers for contours or something like that. So there is a search capability where I can, oops, if I could spell. And if I search for that, it'll find everything in this particular discipline with that name, either for the name of the layer or the description of that. And just as a curiosity, you can see there's things that have boundary, BNDY. I don't want those. So I'm going to put a little exclamation point. That's our little thing that says anything to the left of that will be found. Anything to the right of that will be ignored. So if I ignore the BNDY here, I can search. You'll see that those will go away. So there's some different techniques on how to find the ones I want. Okay. So let's pretend here I'm going to grab these layers. I'm going to add it to the list. So if I were to hit create update, all these layers would get added. And so this is, if you're doing this quite a bit, you can save layer states. In this case, they're called layer sets. So this group of layers, if you're adding those layers, if you're creating those layers a lot, you can create these for your users or internally for just one user wants to do it, that they make these layers a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this layer set. So that list of layers I can create multiple times at different drawings, make it easier for me to find what I'm looking for. Okay, I can either save it locally, which is just for me only, a file, or the standards library. If I set it there, that means everybody will see it. So I'm just going to save it so everybody sees it, in this case, if I could spell. Okay. All right, I'm going to get out of this just to show you I'm not creating anything yet, right? So the idea being is if I go back to my layers palette, you can see it remembers where it was last, even if you close it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just to show you here, I'm going to remove everything so there's nothing left. So the idea being if I go and need to do that again, there's the contour layers that I've saved. Okay, so now it's part of the list and I can create an update very quickly. Okay. So the idea being to search by group, etc. Again, that's all customizable. We'll talk about that later in the admin module. So right now, all we're seeing is what the users would do and how to use the database from within AutoCAD. Okay. Another option, and just briefly show you, there's an option for prefixes and suffixes. You'll see here, these are NCS suffixes, N for new, M for moved, D for demolition, things like that. And if you want to do this, so for example, I'm going to go ahead and load another layer list that I created called sidewalks. All right, so let's say I'm dealing with sidewalks and I'm going to demolish them. So I want the layer to be -D. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to go to my select suffix for D for demolition. I'm going to go ahead and add that suffix. And you see it automatically puts a D on there. Okay. And so what's nice about this is I've programmed so the D for demolition automatically makes the color 251 and hidden 2. So it automatically will do that. And you can see in the NCS it screens it. Okay. So very quickly I can create layers instead of I have to have every single layer in there. I can create these prefixes and suffixes as necessary. Okay. All right, so as I'm doing this, as I'm creating these layers, this was already checked. I didn't really talk about this. It's group filters. What that means is, so it's easier to kind of find stuff. You'll see here that over here, these are group filters that this AutoCAD has had for a while. But what we're doing is when you're coming from the database, it automatically makes those groups for us. This is civil has been created for us. And there's layers in there basically coming from those groups. So there's layers that I brought in for annotation. It isolates those for you. So these are automatically made for you as you're doing it. So you can kind of find layers as you want. So it makes it a little easier to find those things. It's kind of nice. Okay. If you don't like those, obviously you can uncheck that so it doesn't crowd this up if you're not into that kind of thing. Okay. But you can see here, as I'm creating layers, it's a fairly easy interface to find what I want and create it and do it. Now, of course, there is no way for us to prevent a user from doing something like this. Look at our layers, right? I'm gonna get crazy here. I'm gonna grab everything here, including layers from my X reference here. Come here and change the color. And change the line weight, line type to something really weird. Sure, track sounds good to me. Okay. So there's nothing preventing us from doing that. Okay. Yeah, not exactly ideal here. All right. Yeah, so I regen, there's all the tracks. Okay. So what we can do at any given time, if this layer name exists in the database, we can always reset it back to what the database is set to. I'm going to show you a couple of options here. So that's that layers palette. This reset layer properties. What this does is I can also update so I'm in the drawing EXTOPA, that's what I'm in, and this Riolo sub is X referenced into here. So I can also update X references as well. Okay. All right, I'm going to talk about this in just a second. So ignore that for now. I'm going to set it to serval. Okay. So everything goes back. I had to regen to get that back. So the tracks are gone. So everything goes back to what it was set based on the database. So it's a very easy process to go back to what it was. So if you want to go back to standard, piece of cake. Okay. All right. So there's this other one that I had that you said that there's a dialog box that came up again. So what I've done in the database is there's a lot of companies that just have different disciplines, like say a civil and a survey department. The civil designers want the contours to be grayed back, while the survey department wants them to be up in front and center. Okay. So a lot of times different disciplines want them different colors if you're using the CTB file format for plotting. And so what we have is in the database, I've created in one discipline, these layers are different colors. That's all I've done. So if I go to reset layers, so what happened was before, okay, this came up and says, hey, these layers exist in multiple different disciplines. And so do you want to make it look like what civil wants to see or what survey wants to see? So that's the way the survey wants to see it. And then this is the way that Civil wants to see it. So you can very quickly go back and forth depending on who's looking at the drawing or what have you. So there's, again, a very quick way to go back to standard, etc. Right? So making new content for layers, fairly simple. Right? Go to your layers palette, many different ways to do it. Okay? Add prefix suffixes as necessary, and deal with the layer filters if you want to. Okay? So that's a fairly easy process. Of course, as you're learning this, there is a layer ID. This is fairly similar to lists. If you pick on it, right, it'll tell you what layer it's on, what group it comes from, etc. So you can kind of maybe start learning what's that. You can also get through an X reference if I wanted to. All right, so it tells you what the description is. So a list this does a little bit more because it's learning from the database, and that way it can get there very quickly. Okay. All right. So the other thing that happens quite a bit, I'm going to do this pretty fast here. I'm going to make a little scenario here, very simple here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to make some layers that are, of course, are not standard. Okay. And I'm going to make these a different color so it looks a little bit brighter. All right. So I just made up some layers, probably not standard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully those aren't. Hopefully I have better names than that. I'm just going to change these back to those layers just so I have some options here. And I'll put this one on 4, I guess. Okay. So adding new content, fairly easy, layers palette. Now what you're going to want to do, a lot of times you're going to have layers that are not standard. You want to convert them to standard, or you get drawings from other companies and you want to convert them to your standard as well. And so that's why we have this conversion capability. So this is adding new content. I can convert these things to different ways. I'm going to do this briefly. So if I want to convert these to actually standard layers, okay, we're going to do a few exercises on this because it's obviously, this is an important thing. All right, so in here I can see in EX Topo here, I only want to see certain things, right? So, oh, sorry, this is multi-layer styles. Let's go up to layers. That was my fault. So it shows you in here all the different layers in this particular drawing. If I also wanted to look at X references, you can see I can also load in X references, and I can even get additional drawings if I want to do this in a batch format. We'll do some of this in a minute, okay? But first thing I'm going to do here is you'll see here there's standard and non-standard. Standard layers are good, so I'm going to come in here and sort and filter, etc. I'm going to go to filter, and I'm only going to show when the standard is false, so it only shows me the layers that are not standard. Okay. Layer 0 is assuming is not standard because it's not in there, but you can't change that one, of course. All right. And so it even tells you that if you wanted to zoom on click, every time you click on these, it'll zoom to that if you're trying to figure out what the heck it is. Okay. All right. Simple enough. So here, a very quick one, it says 1, 2, 3, 4 should be a different layer. So I'm just going to go kind of really quick here. I'm going to go ahead and say everything. I don't need 0. I'm going to grab all those. I'm going to put them into one layer. So I'm going to right click on the new layer. I'm going to edit that. Okay. And so this interface is pretty, I need to find the layer. Do I want to add a prefix? What do I want to do? This will be a civil layer. And instead of by component, I'm going to do by group. I still have that search capability. And this is going to be for driveways. And this is just a driveway flow fire lane. Sure. So I'm going to highlight that, hit OK. And so what happens here is all of those will be placed on this layer. Again, this is a modeless dialog box. I'm going to kind of move this out of the way a little bit, which means I can stay in here while I'm doing this stuff. Okay. So I'm going to hit convert. And you can see very simply, it's now to that layer. Okay. All right, this is a kind of an easy, it's fairly easy. There's going to be times when you want to convert these layers all the time. So you can do this thing in mappings where you can actually save, hey, this layer is always going to be this. This layer is always going to be this. We'll get to this in a little bit, but kind of move back to the layers just a bit. Okay, so that's a conversion utility. Get rid of those. So far, hopefully so good. So reset layers, layer ID, layers palette. There's a few other things in here you can kind of see where you can save and restore layer settings. These might be useful. There is the AutoCAD layer states, which is very similar. These are a little different would be these are just saving to a file. Keep in mind layer states can also do that. Okay. A few other things about the layers palette. So we talked about how to create layers. You can see it remembers everything that you've done, saves it. You can see there's options for list layers, layer group tools, and if you want to load some line types coming from the database, which we'll which is fairly simple. These are some of the standard layer line types that NCS provides. So if you want to load them into the drawings and use them without having to create a layer, there you go. Okay. The list layers. If you're trying to figure out what's standard, what's not, and almost create similar. There's a reporting as well, but this one is just for layers. So I only want to see things that are non-standard. It looks like there's everything as a standard layer. Okay, because I purged them out. But you can see here I can actually export this list to an Excel file. Excuse me. Give me a second. It's got to take a second here. So if I wanted to export those out for this particular drawing, I can figure out, hey, if it's standard, is it not standard? What's going on with this? That kind of thing. Okay. So this can be kind of a QA/QC kind of thing, quality control. If I wanted to actually list those, and note here, I can do this drawing, external references, or additional drawings. We'll kind of talk about that in just a minute, about how you can do a batch process. Hey, grab the entire project, list all my layers, and tell me what's not standard, and find them for me, and see how we can do that. Okay. The layer group tool is kind of a useful tool. This will show you what groups and disciplines are in this particular drawing. So if I only want to see, let's say, the roads, right? So I can go ahead and check civil roads. Those are all the layers, and I can say for all layers, I can freeze. I can go ahead and isolate freeze, so everything is turned off, or isolate off. So I can do that. So I only see layers that are part of that particular group. Okay. Of course, I can get back. I'm just undoing. So there's a kind of a quick way to isolate certain groups on how you want to actually view them. Instead of doing layer isolate, you can do this. Now keep in mind, it was isolating through that X reference, because there's a layer isolate command. You can't really pick through an X reference. So that's kind of a nice little tool. So a lot of different little things you can do with layers to get things standard, to start standard, etc. So that way we can start using the standard stuff versus having to go about and fix it all later. So it's a little easier to kind of get the content in there while we go. Okay. All right. All right. So back to this one. All right. So we were talking about layers. There's this basically how you want to do it. Add to list, create an update, right? Okay. Oh, sorry, there's my slideshow is doing some funny stuff here. Sorry. All right. My slideshow is frozen for a second. Give me 1 minute. Slideshow. Stop slideshow. It is frozen. Nice. Gotta like that. There we go. All right. Sorry. I went too far. Okay. Layers. All right. So yes. So we have this other option to we store AutoCAD styles, text styles, dimension styles, multi-leader styles, etc. Even page setups, table styles in one interface. If I wanted to go and import those in a single interface, very simple. Okay. All right. So just to show you here, I got my text styles here that are currently in the drawing. So I come here to the styles interface here. And as a user, if I'm looking for a particular dimension style so I can quickly dimension, okay, I can do that. So we got text styles, dimension styles. Again, all of these things are customizable in the admin interface. So if I need to make a change, I make a change there and everybody just sees it. So for example, a dimension style, I'll go ahead and get the decimal one. I'll hit create. All right. So immediately I do a dimension. There's my dimension. So I want the architectural one that I've made. Do a dimension. Okay. Simple enough, right? I guess my current layer is hidden, so that's why that's doing that. So same thing, multi-leader styles, etc. So I have multi-leader styles. I want the note box, so I'm going to go ahead and create that. Go ahead and create my tag. There's my, all right. I just want the dot one, whatever that is. MLD. Okay. So if you create your multi-leader styles in a drawing, then you can very quickly import them into a database, which we'll show a little bit of that later. Okay. All right, I got to speed up a little bit. All right, page setups. All these things are somewhat self-explanatory if I need to bring it in. Okay. I missed one. Yeah, I did. That's what I get. All right, so conversion we talked about a little bit. We'll get back to that one. So I missed one of my slides. That's my mistake. Okay, so the other one is you're going to have a library of details, a library of symbols and sheet borders if you want to bring them in. Get rid of those. Okay. For example, we have this symbols, details, and borders. Okay. So again, a mode list dialog box where you can find what you want. It remembers where you left off, okay, where it is in the drawing, etc. So you can see up here I have symbols, I got details, and sheet borders. Again, all these things are customizable within the admin interface. So if I'm looking for a particular symbol, I'm going to go to Civil, I'm going to go to Utilities. There's some of these I don't like. I don't want to see everything. I just want to see the image only. Okay, I'm going to make it a little bigger. Nah, it's too big. So you can kind of see very quickly I can find what I want, bring it in. Okay, and notice here it is on a particular layer automatically. I didn't realize I saved that. It's on a CNOSIM. Okay, those are all customizable. So if I bring in hopefully something else, an electrical, looks like that might also be CNOSIM. It is. So if I need to change what layer it goes on, etc., I can edit the database the next time I insert it. Let's go that way. A couple other choices here. I'm going to go ahead and go back to utilities. So we have these are the symbols based off of group. Okay. In the settings tab, we have an option for if you want to prompt for an insertion layer. Sometimes there might be an option for instead of putting it on that layer, you want to go ahead and put it on something else. There is also this align symbol on a selected object. Right now I have it set to 45 degrees. I'll show you what I'm talking about with that. I'm going to pick something here. If I don't pick anything, you'll see here it moves somewhere. Well, that's a bad style. Let's not use that one. Let's use this guy. So notice obviously I can rotate it anyway, but if I snap to something, again, notice this is an X reference. If I pick on that and I snap to something, whatever, notice it now increments it every 45 degrees so I can align it as I want. If that's what I'm after. And that can obviously be changed if you don't want to do that. Okay. And the other nice thing about this is if in the database you're trying to find a particular block, you don't know kind of where it is. Well, I can use the query tool to go and find that. So another nice why it's nice to have a database like, hey, I'm looking for a manhole. I don't know. Okay. So I'm looking for a particular description of a block. And if it contains manhole, I'll go ahead and search that. And so now I have all these different blocks that come out that happen to have a description of something that has manhole in it. Okay. Oh, there's the one I want. And there we go. Okay. So I can kind of quickly find that. So as an administrator or a CAD admin, you're going to want to create these blocks and put descriptions on them so it makes it easier to find. Okay. Fairly simple. And so that capability is either for symbols. I also have you have detail libraries. So if I'm looking for a particular detail I have based on a group, okay, maybe it's too big, too small. If I want to go ahead and query for that, I can go ahead and remove that query. All I'm doing is highlighting and hit delete. And let's say I'm looking for a description that contains manhole. I guess I could use the same one. Okay. And so there's ones that have section 3 based in it. There's the one I want. I'll go ahead and bring it in. Okay. Where'd it go? I must have missed it. There we go. Okay. All right. So I can search. I can grab a particular detail that I want. I can't layer off. Oh, because it's so dark. That's why. Okay. All right. So as far as same thing with sheet borders. So nothing's changed there. If I want to go to my layout and create a sheet border, I have one here. I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now, when I'm doing this, because the databases have set it up to X-reference this in, it's telling me where I want to put that title block to X-reference it from, instead of X-referencing it from the database location. Okay? 0, 0. Rotation angle, no scale. There we go. Okay. All right, so there's a title block. It actually automatically inserted some attributes as well. I'll explain how it did that. So it X-referenced part of it. So if I go to my X-reference dialog box, you'll see here that there is an X-reference of that, but it also inserted it. So as an administrator, I can actually have this be dual, because that's what CAD Masters does. We X-reference part of the title block while we insert other parts. Okay? So a very simple way to go and grab what you need from these symbols, details, and sheet borders. Okay. All right, moving right along so we can get something to that. So another one is, so we did talk about the conversion a little bit. I'm going to do this kind of in a batch process here. So I'm going to close this down. Let's not save that. I'm going to open up a new drawing. Give me a second here. I have an example of layer convert. I think it's that one. And of course it's not. Okay. So this is where you come in, the layer convert. We're going to talk about a layer convert a little bit because this is quite important. Okay. So the conversion, again, I'm going to kind of move this out of the way. So back to conversion. And I'm going to be converting layers just like we did before. Okay, so over here in drawings, what I'm going to also do is I'm going to also check on the eTopo start, which is the X reference coming here. And so now you'll see, okay, I have this. All right, I'm going to do this by layer instead of by, so these are all the different layers. Let me move this out of the way a little bit so I can see better. All right, so it even has layers from the other one. So you can see here contour text, these layer names, you can see things jumping around in there because it's actually showing me as I'm clicking on them. But these are not NCS layer names. It's usually, you know, C dash or A dash, etc. So what I've done is I went through the process of, hey, this setback is supposed to be this layer. So this is where it gets a little tedious. You have to go to each one of these layers and set the layer that you want. Okay, I've kind of gone through that exercise in the mappings. So in the mappings, I'm going to come over here to load mappings, and I've created a few here. There's contours and trees, and then a subdivision. So this contours and trees automatically found the layers that, so contour text is supposed to be this, major text is supposed to be that. I'm going to load the other mapping that I have for subdivision, which is for the other stuff. So it went through and said, hey, this layer is supposed to be this. What's nice about the mappings, if you're doing this over and over and over again, like from a particular client, you can see where you can save these mappings and you don't have to do this every single time. It can save you some time. Okay. What's nice about this, it will actually open up the X reference, modify it there, and then reload it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and say convert. Okay. All right. So these are still here because layer 0 can't be modified. Okay. But if I come back here to my layer dialog box, you'll see how they actually all got modified, including inside the X reference. So basically opened it in the background, made the changes, saved it, and reloaded it. Kind of nice. Okay. So you can very quickly convert things to what you like in mass. So I'm going to show you another example here. Externally, just to show you what I got here. So you'll see here I have some, not details, I'm sorry. So there's a layer convert and dim textile convert. So what I have is I have a bunch of details. You can see all these ones here. I'm going to do this in mass. I'm not even going to be in these drawings, and I'm going to change all the layers. Okay. All right. I'm not even in that drawing, right? So I'm going to go to my conversion again, back to my drawings, and I'm going to uncheck that. I don't want my active drawing, and I'm going to go to additional drawings. I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to add a folder. Okay. Looks like I already tried this before, so I'm already in that stair details folder. I don't need subfolders, so no. So what it's doing behind the scenes is it's kind of loading those in memory so it can find out what's inside of those. So you can see here, if you're doing a project that has hundreds and hundreds of drawings, this might take just a minute to go get in that, load that into memory. Okay. And so you can see in here, here's the different layers. They're all, looks like some of these things are on layer 0. By distinct layer, looks like they're all on 0. I wasn't expecting that. Okay. Gotcha. So some of these are on different ones. So what I can do here, if I wished, is I can go ahead and do by layer. I'm going to say all of these things just to be kind of weird. I'm going to grab all of these things and I'm going to put them on a particular layer. I'm just making something. I just picked something just to have something. Okay. So what happens is behind the scenes, it's going to go through open each one of these, convert this layer to that layer. Okay. All right. Now it's going to have a hard time. I got the wrong, I think I got the wrong drawings, but that's fine. Okay. Because it can't convert layer 0. It can't do that. Now, if I hit convert, it's doing this all in the background. You'll see it's kind of going to take a second, but you can see here I can do these things in mass. So you can very quickly see, hey, you know what? I need to have some of these things sorted. I need to have them. You kind of see it's now done. Okay. So what if I want to do textiles? If I want to do dimension styles? If I want to do etc. All of these things can be done in mass. The reason why it's taking a minute here is because it's going in each one of those drawings and figuring out what textiles are there. So I don't need that one. So these are all the different textiles that are in that other one, in that drawing, just like they're all using R100. So if I need to use a different textile, I can very quickly grab all these, convert it to a different textile, and have it update. Okay. All right, we got 20 minutes. So we have these capabilities as far as conversion goes, dimension styles, multi-layer styles, they're all very similar. So how can I convert them, etc. I'm going to go ahead and remove all these. So, because every time I change this, it's going to take a while. All right. So as a user, you can see there's lots of tools to get at your data, your content. You can convert things very quickly, and you can also report on it. So if you want to get reports, this is kind of a quick, I'll use this really quickly here. In this drawing here, if I want to do it here plus this, you'll see here, do I want to look at layers? I can come in here and see, hey, some of these layers are not correct. Okay, so violations, I'm going to go ahead and filter based on not standard. Okay, so you can see there's all kinds of standard stuff in here. So if I go to textiles, you can see here it tells you what the violations are. That textile name doesn't exist at 100. It should be converted. Things like that. Okay. Or this particular standard has got the wrong height or wrong type of font. So it kind of tells you what it is. Now, if I go to all, I had this capability of this drawing here, or I could go to additional drawings to export this to an Excel file. Give me a second. You can kind of see it down here in a minute. Going through that for each one of these things. So layers is fine. Here's the textiles that have problems. Here's the dimension styles that might have a problem. You can kind of see they're all here. Multi-layer styles are fine. Table styles have had some problems. So you can do some capability here is write some reports. So what I've done before is I'll take an entire project, and the way I do that is I'll come down here to the additional drawings, add a folder, the root folder of the project, list all the drawings, and then figure out what's wrong with every single one. So you can do a little bit of reporting to figure out where you need to go fix stuff. Okay. So this is what the user sees. Okay. Nothing too fancy yet. Okay. This is the easy part. So most people that use the software find that the user side is fairly easy. Hey, I want to get a layer. There you go. I want to convert a layer. There you go. If I want to get a textile, etc. It's all set in here. Okay. The harder part is obviously for the CAD administrator and how to administer the product. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about next here. We did talk about how to convert and report. Okay. So the administration interface creates a separate program. So what typically happens is you have to buy the software at a per seat basis. So everybody who uses it gets a user license and they install that and fine. What happens here is once you have that license for the user, we just give you the administration interface for free. So you can install it wherever you want. Obviously, you don't want to give this to everybody. You only want the CAD administrator to do it. So if you have maybe 2 or 3 people that want to be able to edit that, you can. So you can see here, I can either get it to from an icon on the desktop, or I can also get it to it from within AutoCAD. So let's show you that a little bit. I'll do it from within AutoCAD. So that's what this external editor is. So if I click on this external editor, now if you only have the user license, when you click on that, it'll say unknown command. So they can't get to it even though it has an icon for it. Okay. So this is this interface. Oop, that's not what I was looking for. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a database. Before I do that, I'm going to show you. So currently, I have all my databases on my local C drive for this demonstration. That's probably not a good idea for a network. So you can place this wherever you want. It does not matter where. Okay. At any given time, you can always set up the settings and tell it where it's supposed to go. Okay. Nothing too fancy. So you can see here's the NCS, and you see within the NCS, there is an SDF file. That's the actual database. These other subfolders we're going to get to just for in a minute here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that database. So as I do that, I might open up an SQL server, etc., and you can see that's grabbing that SDF file. And so with this interface here, I can come in here and say, do I have a different CTB file? What colors and line weights? Do I need to import some other line types? Do I have other plot styles? And everything is based off of this discipline. Okay. So if I want to make a change to anything, okay, for example, remember those contours that I have in there. So I'm going to go to my civil layers, and these are all the different groups. And you can kind of see, kind of a little complex at first, but it's not too bad because we'll show you how to bring it in from an Excel file instead of having to deal with these categories. So I want to go down to where it was the topo survey. I'll explain why. And then you'll see there's an edit properties. And so this is where this is coming from. So this layer name has this color and then this line type, etc., this transparency. This stuff is controlled in here. So what happens is, now if I make a change to this, I would have to get out of AutoCAD and come back in for it to update. Because what happens is it loads it in memory. So any change that I make in order for the user to see it, the next time they get in AutoCAD, it's done. So I can come in here and say this is supposed to be, instead of this color or whatever, move it over here. It's supposed to be, it makes something pretty drastic. So it's supposed to be 240, whatever. So when I make that change, again, it's real-time editing the database, but the way that the software works, when you open up CAD, it downloads a copy of that to local, so it's not updated yet per se. That's why you have to get out and come back in. Okay, so a very simple process on how to do that. So another thing that I'm going to show you here is, so if I want to get a certain amount of blocks, etc., how do I add stuff to my data? Okay, so underneath civil symbols, you can see here there's these are the groups that are here. So if I go to like utilities here, you can see those are the names and descriptions. Again, remember that might have been important for searching. What I'm going to do over here is I'm going to right click on symbols and I'm going to add a group. Okay. I'm going to call this one, I don't know, trees. Okay. And then you can come in here and add symbols. You'll see there's a choice here. I can add symbols or add nested symbols. What that means, if I have a drawing that has a ton of symbols in it, that's what a nested symbol is. An add symbol would be each individual drawing would be its own block. That's what I have here. So I'm going to go to add symbols. I have some blocks that are trees. Each individual one is there. So what happens here is when I do this, the standard manager's question, I'm not going to explain that much. I'm just going to go and say no here. I'll explain what that means. So behind the scenes it's doing this. It's writing images for each one of these. So you can see here, those are all the blocks. Those are all the images for each one of those. It looks like those are not trees. So the CG V10 versus those. So these guys here, the V for vehicles, I'm going to remove those symbols. Okay. So kind of what's happening externally as I do this is you'll see here, I am in the civil discipline. Under symbols, there's now a new group called trees that automatically got created. And then there's all this stuff that's in there. The reason why that's important is because when the user needs to go grab it, he needs to know where that block is located in order for it to bring it in. Okay, simple enough. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and grab all these. I'm going to put on a particular layer. These are trees. I'm going to go to landscape, and I'm going to search for a tree layer. There's my plant tree. Okay, so all of those will go on that layer. Do I want these scaled? Do I want an O snap, etc.? Do I want a layer prefix description? You can see here I can get kind of fancy. Okay, simple enough. So as I do this, I'm making this change. So the next time that I open up CAD, which I'm going to do now, just to show you one time here. Go back and open up Civil 3D again. Come on. It's opening now. It's just taking a second. There it is. So I should have a new symbol group for trees and have all my trees in there, etc. When I insert one, it should go on the layer L plant tree. All right. I'm not going to go into a drawing, so I'm going to go right to my symbols. Okay, there's my symbol. There's my trees. There's my tree. Pick it and go to town. Okay. Kind of small. There you go. And just to show you, if I list it, it's now on that L plant tree. Okay. So as an administrator, I can go into the database and make changes to anything that I want. Okay. All right. So ideally, I'm going to just see, got 10 minutes. Should be good. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you here is I'm going to go to the database and I'm going to create a whole new one. So you might want to create one from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. Okay. I'm going to call this one demo test. All right, and so it's empty, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import my CTB file and import some line types. So it's in the database. So I'm going to import my CTB file. And that's a create database. So I'm going to use our CAD Standards full from CMI, CAD Masters Incorporated. All right. So now I basically whatever layers got created for that. So now I have the right colors for what line types there. Colors for line weight. So I'm going to import an LAN file. You see I can also load from drawing, but I'm going to import an LAN. I just grabbed the typical one that comes with it. So now I have all those line types. I'm going to get rid of the isometric ones. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and import the STB file in case I want to use that. Use that one because I happen to like that one. The default one is this. All right. And so typically now what's going to happen is I have to create a discipline. And notice here there's a couple of choices: add a discipline or create a discipline from a drawing. So if I add a discipline, let me show you what happens. When you add a discipline, I'm going to call this one civil. And how many categories is it? Typically, if you want NCS, it's going to be a 5-category system. I'm going to, in the interest of time here, I'm going to put a dash delimiter for each one of these things. Actually, dash, 3 dash, 4 dash, 5. Okay. So I've created a discipline that's 5 categories. So when I come into here, I can come into this thing and create my abbreviations to make my layer. So let's say I want to make a layer called C-road. I'm going to do this really fast because I'm running out of time. So this comes up, abbreviation C, description civil, add component. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to add one called roadway. You can see where this might get a little tedious, right? And so the other ones, I'm going to create, add a null component. My dialog box keeps on coming up on the other screen, so you'll have to trust me that I'm just doing that for each one. And I'm going to highlight all those. Okay. And oops, sorry. I have to create a layer. I have to add a group, sorry. I'm going to call this roadway. And so this one I can go in here and say create. And so what happens when it's created, I can say what color I want it to be. And so you can see where this will take you forever to do. Okay. The reason why I just want to show you briefly that is because it's the wrong one. So in here, I have an Excel spreadsheet, like say for general. So you can see here, it shows you what group it is, what the layer name is, the description, line weight, color, etc. All the stuff that's in here. You can see it's a fairly particular format. It's in the documentation, so it's not too bad. Instead of doing it that way, I'm going to go ahead and import from Excel. This is the typical procedure. So I'm going to import the general to this one. It's reading it, so let's put it on this side. Okay. So each one of these columns, you can determine what it is as long as you keep it the same. You should be fine. I'm not going to do too much here. I'm going to hit OK. So you can see they all get added to that. And so now all those groups that were in there are now automatically there. That would be the easier way to do it instead of building it from scratch for sure. So if I wanted to import more layers, you can just import from Excel. I'm going to grab the electric. I should probably create another discipline for that. Layers, okay. It's going in the background. This one has 218 layers. Same thing. I'm not going to change anything. Okay. So now it's adding all that for me as well. So now I have tons of stuff. So you can see here, creating that fairly simple. One other way is if you already have a template or a drawing that has all your stuff in it. I'm going to do this really fast. So I'm going to come in here and create a discipline from a drawing instead of doing it manually. I have this drawing template I made that has a bunch of stuff in it, textiles, etc. So it's exporting that and creating a dialog box for me. What do I want to call this discipline? Let me call this one general. I don't need to import any line types. I don't need to import the CTB. I've already done that. You can see here there's got 11 blocks, 2-dimension styles, table styles, etc. It's got all this stuff that it's going to put into that. Okay. It's going through the process here. Okay. So I automatically have layers that are coming from that drawing. The symbols that were in there are automatically there, and those that's got brought in. Okay. I already have some textiles, dimension styles already in there. Whatever was in that drawing is basically here, and I can start weeding away. So you can see here, creating content is not very difficult. As far as layers go, spreadsheet would be the best. Or if you have a drawing, it's going to be a quick there, okay, as well. And so this is that CAD Standards. I can't remember what I call it now. Oh yeah, demo test. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to close out of this. I got 5 minutes. I'm not going to close. So I would close out, come back in, and then I would come over to here to load in the correct, the demo test instead. Okay. Oops. That was my mistake. Try that again. Standards library. I'd uncheck that and say use the demo test. Connect to it. And so then I can go to my layers palette, which is going to be not much to it. And I could go to my group, and there's my group, and I can automatically add to list. And so they're automatically there. Okay. All right, for the final 5 minutes, I am going to talk about one other thing is we also can do Civil 3D style management. So if you're using Civil 3D, you can see why this might be quite useful. If you have never used Civil 3D, probably not going to be that useful for you. Okay. So this is just an add-on to this, so where I can actually import styles to a database and then import them back to a drawing. But what's nice about this is that I can actually make changes to the styles in our interface, mainly for standard stuff like what layer it goes on, etc. Okay. So we're going to do that briefly here. I am going to as far as the user side goes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new drawing with no styles. I'm using AutoCAD template that has nothing in it. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. So this is the Civil 3D tool space, so I want it auto hidden. So you can kind of see in here, there's nothing in here. And so the user side, you can go ahead and grab the Civil 3D style settings. Okay. I made a mistake. I have to go back to my NCS. So I was connected to the wrong database. So back to my Civil 3D styles. And so you can see here what we call style sets. We'll get to that in a minute. But say I want to deal with surfaces. I've done this before. So this is surfaces. And you can see underneath here, I have surface styles already in here. So if I wanted one or two, or if I wanted to come in here and say, check everything, I want them all, I can grab everything. I'll go ahead and import. You can see it's doing it. And so now I have all the styles that I want. Including, that's everything. That's all the label styles, etc. So they're all here. Layers got created from standards, moved, etc. Ready to go. Okay. So if I have the administration module installed, I can come through the Civil 3D admin and open up the database so I can make changes to it that way. I don't want the demo test. Okay. Okay, so the idea being here, you can get clever on how you want to do what we call style sets, right? So underneath the civil discipline, you can see add a style set, and you can put whatever you want in that. I can go in here if I wanted to in surfaces, let's say, and then go to surface style for the 1 in 5 design. You can see in here I have the opportunity here to make changes to this. So if I don't do that, or if I want this layer to be something else from standards, I can make very quick changes so that the next time that gets imported, that layer will be here now. Okay, simple enough. But that's one at a time. So we have this global editor up here. So what I foresee happening, I'm running out of time here, is that you can import a bunch of styles to this, come into your global editor. Let's say every time I see a layer for, let me see, let me only see style sets for surfaces. Okay. And I'm looking for layers. So all these layers, so everything I want. So for example, I'm going to be kind of crazy with this. I'm going to grab all these things, grab all of these from all these components, edit the layer to that. Now what's going to happen the next time I import those styles, that's going to be the layer. So you can see you can make massive changes. Another one that I like a lot is textiles. Bring in all of my label styles, and the textile is wrong. I need to change it instead of standard. I need to be something else. Getting this textile from the standard here. And I'm going to say I want that one. The next time it imports, boom, you got to go. Okay. So there's a lot of things you can do with massive changes as far as with layers, textiles, and even blocks for that matter. So if I want a particular block, instead of that block, I need to be another block. I can make massive changes that way. So I can import these from the drawing. So let me show you this. I'm going to go and put this real quick here. I got 1 minute. I'm going to make a style set. Show you the process of bringing it into the database. So there's nothing in here now. I just create a style set. This is everything that you can bring in. And I'm going to do just points because I don't want to bring in everything. It takes a little bit. So I'm going to import styles and settings from the points node. I got to go back to where I was. So I have a drawing that has a bunch of Civil 3D styles in it. So it's in the background, it's opening that drawing, getting all the point styles and label styles, anything from that node, everything is underneath that is going to import it to the database. Okay. All right, so now there's all my point styles. Go into any one of these, those are all the styles that came in. If I wanted to make massive changes, I could. Same thing with label styles, all those are there. And you can see each one of these shows you all the data for each one of these, so you can kind of get an idea of what's happening with it. This stuff is not editable in here, only the standard stuff, layers, textiles, and blocks. Okay. All right. And then if I wanted to, I can go to my global editor for all my layers and only look for, what did I call this one? I did call it testing. So only the stuff that's in testing. Those are every single layer. There's a V node. I'm going to go ahead and set all of these things to layer 0. Sometimes you want to do that. And these things to layer whatever. That layer right there. Okay. Again, you can make massive changes outside of Civil 3D. So when next time that somebody imports those styles, they're updated. So you can see that can be a big benefit as well. Okay. All right. So to finish it off, I'm going to say that, let me go back to this guy. Oops. How about the first slide? So again, if you want to get a hold of me, best way is by email. We can give you a demonstration again for internally if you want as well. Okay. But we can always give you a demonstration as well as we can give you a software for a certain amount of time, a 30-day trial. If you wanted to kind of try it out, we don't mind doing that as well. And I can help you if you do purchase the software, I can help you create your content and walk you through some of that process to do it. So we do that quite often. So there's plenty of stuff to do. So if you have any questions here, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you want. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you for your time and hope to hear from you.